I mentioned this morning this amazing committee that we had put this event together this year. We've never had such an amazing committee do such amazing work. And part of what they did differently this year is to really help with the agenda. Everybody reached out to the people they knew and the speakers that they knew and the people that they knew really do their stuff. And then we decided on the themes. And if you noticed, it's all about energizing the future workforce. So this panel, we decided we need to start with what are the challenges of educating America's workforce. So we know that as we pull this together and continue to work on it, we're all running into a lot of challenges. But we wanted to pull some leaders here that we felt really knew what those were and give us some ideas on how to better address them. So as we have a power team here, you guys. So what we decided is for a power team, we needed a power moderator. And the only one we could come up with that we thought that could handle this panel is Arlene Abbott. Good friend, colleague, and I'm going to use Diane Quincy's words. So Diane was on a panel not long ago, and she said, Barbara and I have been mucking around in this workforce stuff for about 10 years. So I would say the same about Arlene. We've been mucking around in this stuff for about 10 years. And at the time, Arlene was the OD manager for Chelan County PUD when I was still at Portland General Electric. So we were pulling together this regional partnership even then, 10 years ago. So just so you know, this didn't just happen overnight. But I just want to tell you a little bit about Arlene, and then she's going to introduce her panel. She, as I mentioned, was former OD manager for Chelan County PUD. She has gone into private consulting, is now under contract with IBEW 77, and she has pulled together the New Tech Training Center in Richland, and it has taken off, and she's done amazing, amazing work over there. So that's really not what we're here to talk about, but catch her over the next day and a half and have her tell you about it. I know she'll be happy to share. So she is friend, colleague, and my favorite travel partner. Arlene.
Thank you. So I think I'm double live here. So I'll just put this down. So welcome everybody, and thank you for coming to this first panel presentation. You know, there's always a saying that you save the best for last, and I would beg to differ. The 4 panel members that you see before you are an incredibly talented and very accomplished group of individuals, and I'm pleased to introduce them. So to my left is Jeff Johnson. He's the president of the Washington State Labor Council, AFL-CIO. Since joining WSLC staff in '86, Jeff Johnson has served as special assistant to the president, lead lobbyist, research and organizing director, and also a shop steward for his staff unit, which is part of Office and Professional Employees International Union Local 8. He has been Washington State Labor Council president since December of 2010. His work is focused on legislation that improves the lives of working people through increasing collective bargaining and organizing rights, economic justice and anti-poverty measures, strengthening workers' compensation, unemployment insurance and employment standards, improving the health system, and protecting the rights of farm workers and immigrant workers. He's represented labor on a number of committees, both internal and external. Gosh, there were so many there. I didn't read them all. So pretty amazing, huh? Welcome, Jeff. To his left is Kelly Kirkland. Kelly is the Education Services Manager for O'Brien and Company. She's been working on sustainability issues since 1999 with a focus on education and outreach. As the Education Services Manager at O'Brien, she develops curricula, teaches classes, and facilitates workshops on a variety of green building related topics. She's coordinated the development of a local course for construction trades apprentices and assisted with journey-level green building course customized for the state of Hawaii. Most recently, she's developed and recorded a training video on sustainability for field staff building the new 520 floating bridge. She is a certified sustainable building advisor and an LEED LEED accredited professional with a specialty in operations and maintenance. Welcome, Kelly. To my right is Dave Myers. David is Executive Secretary of Building and Construction Trades. He's a third-generation union crafts worker and has been a member of the IBEW Local 970 for the past 16 years. After completing his apprenticeship in 1999, David spent 5 years in the field as a journeyman electrician before transitioning to the Department of Labor and Industries, where he worked as an electrical inspector, compliance officer, and then he moved on to serve as the electrical technical specialist for 4 years. In 2007, he was elected business manager and financial secretary of IBEW Local 970, positions that he served until his appointment as Washington State Building Construction and Trades Executive Secretary in October of 2011. Welcome, Dave. And last but not least, Dr. Robin Podmore, who is Vice President of New Initiatives and Outreach, PSE, IEEE. He's also President of Incremental Systems in Bellevue. For more than 40 years, Dr. Robin Podmore has dedicated his career to the development of computer applications for power system ops and planning. He's been advocating methods, standards, and programs whereby transmission and generation operators could enhance and add functions to their existing energy management systems through a series of incremental upgrades. Dr. Podmore's business travels include the international zone in Baghdad, where he trained Iraqi grid operators with his company's power simulator product to maintain the reliability of their interconnected electrical systems. He develops innovative solutions for power systems with a focus on capacity development, using simulators and online training along with cognitive methods for knowledge capture and transfer. More recently, he's been working on how these methods can be applied to developing affordable, renewable energy solutions for developing countries. His work experience includes VP of EFCA, VP of Business Development, Alstrom EFCA. Welcome, Robin. So pleased to be working with these folks. And I'd like to start out by saying that we are here as an entire group to talk about educating America's workforce, but we really want to do more than simply educate. We want to affect change through that education. Changes that provide career lattices for our workforce, changes that provide industry with a workforce that can use these smart and green technologies, and changes that contribute to a community, a society, and a world, and improves the quality of living, encourages economic development. So Robin, would you be so kind as to begin the discussion on that, please? Oh, where did our mic go?
Yeah, I think I'll stand up. Makes it a little easier. So that's a tough question. So I think one thing I'd like to follow up on, though, is the IEEE Power and Energy Society. So if I look at the community colleges, you all provide tremendous value in your community. You look at the experiences, the fees, the dedication. But where the weakness is networking together. And I think what you've all done here today and what you've started, and we heard from Wanda independently, that this state is becoming a leader in that area. So why not just keep pushing that whole thing? Who's the leader in, what state is the leader in building aircraft? You all know that. People around the world know that. What state is the leader in coffee? I always say that if you can have a business to sell something that's addictive, it's crazy. I mean, you're on a good thing. So the line at my Starbucks gets bigger and bigger every day, okay? what state is the leader in PC-based software, all right? So why not? Why not shoot for the moon, everyone? Why not go for it? Why not make this state a leader in the smart grid? I mean, we think about how we can take the smart grid. It needs the best of manufacturing. It needs the best of digital computers, technology. It needs a lot of coffee so all the developers can stay up at night and keep these systems running. So let's just dream big and go for the fences. And so I really think that this state has an ability to do some amazing things. We've got the benefit of the hydro. We have the wind turbines, the wind farms growing like crazy. We have the legacy coal that has to be adapted. So I think that's, and I believe that the community colleges, even though I grew up in a small town and I worked my way through by farming and picking potatoes and working on farms, and eventually went to a school and did my bachelor's and my doctorate. The respect I have through the people that build things and work with their hands is tremendous. And we have to close what I call the engineer-operator, the engineer-craftsman gap, okay? There's nothing like more useless than an engineer that just doesn't understand how stuff works. And I know you're, yeah. But engineers can learn as well. And so what we have here is an ability through the community colleges, and I'd like to just go through a couple of PowerPoints on the Power and Energy Society, because I know we're down one speaker. What's that? Oh, I have a clicker? How about that? Yeah. So I do want to encourage you all to follow up with, which one here? Just the, is it on there? Here we go. Yeah, just, so I would really like, through Wanda, who you all had a chance to meet, and Wanda is a very passionate, engaging evangelist for the cause of this business. She convinced me to join this, to lead this initiative. Next slide. And so please, this society has the ability to leverage the effects of community colleges working individually. And it's a good deal, $180 for a full member and $32 plus 18 for students. Let's go. Next one. And so one of the things we're doing, though, is lighting up the world with the idea of a community charging station. People can come on up with their batteries, get them charged, and take them home. We have 6 of these trailers in Haiti. We're lighting up 240 homes. The Haitians pay $6.50 a month. Not a single piece of equipment has been stolen. Not a single bill has not been paid on time. So, next slide, please. There's a lot of engineers, and not just engineers. Wanda changed the name of the Power and Engineering Society to the Power and Energy Society deliberately with the idea that we couldn't solve problems just as electrical engineers. We needed, yes, and that was a big change, okay? And so we need to have electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, civil engineers, and we need people. Laura Satchel has a solar trailer, a solar suitcase. Laura was an obstetrician that couldn't operate anymore, so she came up with an idea of a solar suitcase where you can go light up an emergency operating room. Instead of babies being delivered by candlelight with high risk of death, they're done under a nice bright light. And so we have a wide variety of people working together. Next slide, please. So the solar trailer is changing lives in Haiti. I'm going to ask Jackie to give out the little brochures. This is raising funds to light up the world, but more than that, I want you to take these back to your churches, your youth groups, your schools. If you need access to technology, engineering help, our group will provide it. Next slide, please. There's a wind turbine project at Seattle University. Next slide, please. So, the question came up today. I've seen Barbara's energy. It's great. I've asked Barbara to head up an outreach from the Power and Energy Society to community colleges. We need your input, okay? We need to be able to have men and women of all ages that can build things and make things work, and then also grow into understanding the theory and the equations. So that's the one thing that I've promoted as a new initiative. My job is new initiatives and outreach. So on top of the outreach for lighting up the world, this is the second most important. Well, this will become a real key. It will have increased student membership, more jobs for community colleges, and more transitions from associates to bachelor engineering degrees. We need to work on the four-year schools to have them accept that, don't we? Next slide, please. So that's the basis of what I really want. And thank you so much, Wanda, for coming and showing in a first-class manner what the Power and Energy Society can do. And again, I want to make that same. To me, I had tremendous mentors. My connection with the Power and Energy Society in New Zealand was a journal about that thick, okay? And that was enough to get me inspired. And I've made lifelong friends and associates through that. And I just invite you all to start becoming part of that society, all right?
Wow. Boy, when you ask him a question, you get an answer, don't you? This next question I'd like to field towards Dave. And Dave, there have been a lot of changes in the construction industry lately in the last 5-10 years with the introduction of green technologies and green building. So what kind of skill sets are you looking for today that maybe you weren't looking for 10 years ago? It's a two-part question. And then what advice would you give to a young workforce about being prepared to enter the construction trades?
Hello? Oh, there we go. I'm not going to stand up. I'm going to go ahead and sit down. And I don't have a PowerPoint, and I know you guys are a captive audience, but I'll keep my my answer short. I'm going to take 2 bites of the apple on this. The question was, what kind of skill set are you looking for today? For apprenticeship, the skill set really hasn't changed. When we're looking for an apprenticeship applicant, we're looking for hardworking individuals from all backgrounds, for people entering the industry. And the ability to learn and retain. And when somebody's entering the workforce, the apprentices aren't evaluated, applicants aren't evaluated on what they know at the time that they're applying for the apprenticeship. What they're evaluated on is if they have the ability to retain knowledge and be able to move through the industry and graduate from an apprenticeship program. Now, on the other hand, for the construction workforce that's there right now, for those already in the industry, the answer is a little different. In order to respond to these changing industries, there are a few things that must happen for existing construction workforces to be prepared when those industries change and the business need is there for an emerging variation of the existing skill set. To stay ahead, there must be an active pursuit of curriculum development at our national level in anticipation of the upcoming trends or to respond to the need right in front of us. Our national building trades is very proactive in going out and creating curriculum to try to lead the industry. The individuals that are in the workforce have already gone through an apprenticeship, so they have a good foundation and a good skill set of what they need. Now, when the industry changes, the National Building Trades tries to create that curriculum to get out in front of it so that we can try to get that information out to the workers and get them trained prior to being out there. So the skills gap for the construction workers that are already there, that's getting the information down to them. Our National Building Trades is very, very proactive in getting that information, getting the curriculum together, and then our job is to get it out to the workers, get them out there, and get them trained prior to the need for that skilled workforce. And what I would ask, or what I would recommend to the people coming into the workforce is to find the emerging industry that you may want appropriate trade apprenticeship. And on our website, we have all of our affiliates. Some are in industries that, you know, they don't really change a whole lot, and some are in industries that are changing every year. If there's an industry that a person wants to enter that isn't in the industry already, go to the website, look through those apprenticeship programs, look at what matches them up, and encourage them to work hard during the apprenticeship and embrace all disciplines that are taught. An apprenticeship will give you a well-rounded experience and education that will allow you to survive and give you the ability to thrive within a craft regardless of the radical change in the industry. And that's what's different. The apprenticeship gives you the tools to succeed within the industry. Electrical, per se. The emerging industries are solar, wind. We don't know what the next technology is going to be. An apprenticeship gives you the foundation. It gives you the skills to be able to change with that. That is in pure contrast to, going through a training program that you're a taskmaster. And we find that a lot these days. Somebody is trained to do a task. And when the industry does a radical change, that person can't adapt to that change, and we have displaced workers. So I would encourage anybody that wants to enter any emerging field, do your research, get into an apprenticeship program, because that apprenticeship program will give you the skills to be able to adapt to the changing workforce. To the people that are already in the workforce, encourage them to take all the training that they can. Like I said, our National Building Trades has the curriculum for all the contractors and the government entities and any businesses that are in here. Know that the National Building Trades has the curriculum. They're the leader, and they're going to get it down to the workforce that we represent. We represent 60,000 construction workers in the state, and we put on tons and tons of continuing education, and our members are really interested and committed to meeting your needs moving into the future. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dave. My next question is to Kelly. The design and construction professionals use traditionally a very linear process that goes from the owner to the architect to the builder and then to the building occupants. But Kelly and O'Brien and Company is helping to transform that linear process into something very different. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Is this on? Great. Sure. So first, for a little bit of context about what the heck O'Brien and Company is. We're a small green building consulting company. We have 3 main service areas. The first one is helping builders and architects and owners design and construct energy efficient, healthy buildings. So real hammers, real projects on the ground. We also do a lot of policy and planning work. So we help do things that move the green building industry forward, like rating systems like the Built Green program, keeping those up to date, or helping municipalities do a sustainability or green building strategy for their whole jurisdiction. And then the last and I think most important thing we do is training and education around green building, because that's how everybody gets better at doing what we need to do. So that's the context for what I'm going to talk about. Everybody knows about that linear process where the owner says, this is what I want, and the architect draws something off, and there's a lot of handoffs that happen. And that process can result in a green building. You might get something with solar panels on top, and it costs a lot of money. But the problem with that process is that it's the same way that we've done things for a long time. That process is what has gotten us inefficient buildings. We really need to think about, and we've talked about it a lot today already, working together better. So O'Brien and Company helps facilitate construction projects using the integrated process or integrative design process, depending on who you ask. And the idea there is that you're capturing the good ideas that the builders have from being on the ground, that the facility staff have from running lots of buildings, that the building occupants have because they know what they want. They know how the building needs to work to serve their needs. You get all of those people right up front to get all those good ideas on the table, so that as you move forward through your process, you aren't finding out at the end, gosh, it would have been really nice if we had added this feature, or gee, if only we had invested more in energy efficiency in our building, we wouldn't have to spend so much on those solar panels. So that's it in a nutshell. You guys all know very well how much really valuable expertise there is in the field staff, and we try to bring as many people to the table up front as possible. Often that starts with an eco-charrette. Does anybody know what that is? Sort of. So that's an early meeting where you get to think really big about the project and set some high-level goals about what you want to achieve. Maybe not just an environmental goal, but maybe it's a school and a modern learning environment is what's really important. Or maybe you want the kids to learn about energy through the way the building is designed. And so setting those goals up front means that everybody along the way knows that that's what you're trying to achieve. And then you continue to have those people meet throughout the process so that you have those opportunities to get their input before it's too late. I worked on a project where it was a LEED NC, new construction, silver building, and the owner was very, very proud of it, and they hired O'Brien & Company to help them get their LEED existing building certification, and that certification is for very high-performing buildings that use very little energy every day. And they were just sure that since they had a building that was designed and built to be energy efficient, that that must be what they already had. And so we went in and we actually looked at their score. There's a scale 1 to 100 on how efficient a building is. They were at 14. 100 is what you're supposed to be aiming for. And they couldn't figure out what was wrong. And what was wrong is that the facility staff didn't really know how to operate their building. And somebody, right around the time it had opened, had pressed an override button. And that building had been running 24 hours a day for 3 years. And nobody knew. In fact, I drive by that building on my commute, and I saw all the lights were on in the middle of the night, and I got home, left a voicemail for my client. So it takes that facility staff being engaged early in the process to say, you know, we're going to need special training to operate this fancy green system you've got, and we're going to need it before you hand over the keys and say, make this happen. I also worked on a building where it was for the Coast Guard in Alaska, and it's a very remote space, and so somebody thought it would be a good idea to make the building highly automated so that the staff wouldn't have to worry about it. But the problem is that the Coast Guard staff turns over every 3 years at this location, and things break. It's Alaska, it's really cold, so they need that building to work. And they have to use most of their operating budget to fly in experts to fix things constantly. And all they want is a building that they can flip a switch and turn it on or turn it off when they need it. So that's another reason why having the building occupants involved is important to getting a design that really, really works. The way they heat part of that building is using the commercial kitchen oven, because their windows leak and, you know, the baseboard heater stopped working and, you know, what else are they going to do? So there's lots of good examples of why having everybody involved really results in a better and more sustainable project, because it actually achieves those benefits into the future, right? You can sustain the efforts you've made up front. So that's my 2 cents about why an integrative process is a better idea. And I heard somebody say earlier that we need people to know what they don't know so that they can ask the questions. So we've talked a lot about having people need more expertise, but bringing the team together means that you get people, somebody in the room is going to know the right question to ask, and you can get it answered and move forward with the project.
Thank you so much, Kelly. So this next question is for Jeff Johnson. And Jeff, there have been a lot of headlines in the last few months and even weeks and days about the labor movement in several states, notably Wisconsin. So we're all in the room, we're watching that very closely. Some would argue that labor has lost its relevance in today's changing workforce environment. What changes and what role do you see that labor can play in providing energy and focus to educating America's workforce?
Thank you, Arlene. So that's a big question. There are actually like 3 questions embodied in that.
Go for it.
So I'll do my best. So look, we're all aware of the election, the recall election for Governor Scott Walker that happened a couple weeks ago. And that recall election failed. I don't think that that was a referendum on labor's relevance in that state. In fact, and the reason I can say that so confidently is that last November there was a ballot measure on the election in Ohio, a much more conservative state than Wisconsin in general, and it was a citizen's veto of SB 5. Which did almost the same thing that Governor Scott Walker did in Wisconsin, which was it stripped collective bargaining rights away from public employees. And the Citizens Ohio rejected that idea. I think what we saw in Wisconsin was people's uncomfortableness with trying to recall a governor. That's a big, big issue. Only 3 times in the history of our country has a governor been up on a recall election. So not a good referendum on this issue. Look, labor has historically played a very strong role in workforce training. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the role we've played and then talk about some of the changes that I think we can make. Clearly we've played a strong role through our apprenticeship programs. Our apprenticeship programs took the model out of the old medieval craft system, right? Where you've got a journey level person, you've got an apprentice, and you've got that kind of master apprentice relationship, and you learn on the job. In our case, you learn both in the classroom as well as learn on the job. Our state is unique. It truly is. Back in 1991, the labor community, the business community, and state government got together, and we had a range of discussions around workforce training. We recognized a series of problems in our state. One, we weren't doing as much training as we needed to get workers ready for changes in the economy. Two, we didn't have a coordinated system. Long story short, we created the Workforce Training, Education, and Coordinating Board, and we did it in a way no other state has done it. We created a tripartite system where there was equal representation of business, labor, and state government. And we've maintained that board over the years to both coordinate the system, to evaluate the system, and then make recommendations to the legislature on how to make it better. And so the whole discussions around skill standards and other issues like that came through discussions of the board and bringing in others to that discussion. Very, very proud of that. We've been trying to get other states to replicate that model and have equal voices. So far, we've not succeeded. We also, through a piece of legislation in the early 90s, really accelerated the community and technical college system doing workforce training. We had passed a particular piece of legislation. Labor and business were on opposite sides of the issue over the funding mechanism because it diverted some of the tax dollars going into the unemployment system. But nonetheless, that issue aside, where we had points of commonality was how do we want that system to work within the community technical college system? And the one thing we agreed on was we wanted it to be much more accountable. And we created an RFP process for the colleges to really drill down on the types of training that was needed in our economy, making sure that there wasn't duplication between colleges in the system, and that we were training workers for jobs that where there was a comprehensive set of skills and where there were actually jobs at the end of the training tunnel. We went on to create things like the IBEST system, the Integrated Basic Education Skills Training Programs, where we, took both, ESL learners, combining that with basic skill training, doing wonderful things. Great examples coming out of our roofers union. Great system that's now being used in other parts of the country. I guess our latest endeavor together was a couple years back, or about 18 months back. I'm sorry Representative Sequist isn't here because he played a big role in this. And this was when the discussion around a third year of math in the high schools came about, and what should the content of that math be. Together, business and labor and state legislators were able to get our applied math that we use in our skills centers considered as rigorous enough to be considered part of that third year math in K through 12. So these are some of the roles in which we we've worked historically on workforce training. Now the challenges today are immense. We're living right now in a zero-sum budget economy in terms of public resources in our state. This is not good. We've been arguing for 4 years now that we need to be investing our way through this recession. But the fact is, when you have a legislature that cannot raise revenue, it's really hard to put your money where your mouth is, right? And as a consequence, we've seen cuts at the community and technical colleges, cuts at our four-year universities, and we've seen staggering increases in tuition. This is not a good position for us to be in as an economy. We've also seen over the years, and I should say this, when When I started my career, it was as a teacher back in New York City. I taught for the State University of New York, but the program I taught in was with the IBEW apprenticeship program Local 3. And the apprentices, 2 nights a week for 4 years, they would come and get their electrical instruction. And then after they did an hour and a half each night of that, they'd spend another hour and a half with us learning about labor economics, international economics, sociology, writing composition, math, so on and so forth, so that by the time they became journey-level apprentices, they also had earned an associate's degree in labor studies from the State University of New York, right? And back then, the average age of our apprentice was between the ages of 18 and 21. Today, the average age of an apprentice in Washington State is 28 to 30 years of age. So we've got a lost generation that we've been facing for the last 15 years or so. This is not good, okay? And when you see the level of recession that we've gone into, none of us in this room have lived through as deep a recession as we are in right now. The last time was during the 1930s, so your parents, or in some cases grandparents, may have lived through that. But it's created a certain level of hopelessness out there amongst our youth. And when they look at the great inequalities of income and wealth out there, it makes that hopelessness even greater. So we have some real challenges for us. Now, one of the good parts is that, I mean, ironically, as tuition rates skyrocket, and folks look at their family budgets and say, we can't do this anymore, the apprenticeship programs look better and better and better because it's, you know, as Rick Johnson said before, it's the original 4-year degree, right? You enter it, and while you're learning, you're earning money, right? So it's not you laying out tuition, it's you earning a paycheck and getting this very comprehensive education. But there's certain things we need to do, certain changes we have to make together, not just as labor, but together. One is we have to make sure that competencies that we're teaching young folks in our apprenticeship or pre-apprenticeship programs remain very high. We can't allow to balkanize the skill sets that people learn. We can't chunk out skills and say, okay, we're just going to do this little bit here, and then these young people are trained to do, you know, a very small function. We need to think big. We need to think globally. The more comprehensively we train workers and the more their skills are transferable, the stronger that person is going to be able to earn a real family wage living job, as well as I think the stronger our industry is going to be. Second thing we need to do a better job at is creating pathways to our full apprenticeship programs. We have several apprenticeship programs in our state. New is one of them. The SVI, Seattle Vocational Institute, does wonderful work going into the communities and taking young folks that haven't necessarily had the advantages of many of our youth and put them through a pre-apprenticeship program, getting them ready for both the skill content for particular trades, but also learning the basic skills of how to get to somewhere on time, how to be ready for it, how to be fully productive. And they're really good feeder programs. We don't have enough of them. We need to do more of that. And I'm cognizant of what both Wanda said, as well as I didn't catch the name of the woman who raised the issue about her daughter being in middle school, and that became kind of a dividing line, you know, kind of making huge life choices about whether I go in a technical field or turn it off. And Wanda mentioning that the decision for young females on whether you're going to study math or not happening in grade 4, kind of a scary thing, but it makes me think of, my goodness, you know, we have to reach into the high schools, but we have to reach into the middle schools, and we have to reach into grade school as well, and think of innovative ways to open young people's minds to possibilities out there. And the more we can do that in an applied fashion, it seems like the better luck we're going to have. And finally, I think we have to do some really aggressive marketing around skills training and apprenticeship programs. I believe that we live in this society that is very market-based and tries to simplify everything, that everything is looked at in terms of dollars, we're consumers, so on and so forth. But from a labor movement perspective, we still see ourselves as living in a fairly class-based society that is, like I say, kind of polished over. People don't like to talk about that, but the fact is the whole Occupy movement that came about last year raised these issues in front of us. We haven't had this level of inequality of income and wealth in this country since the 1920s. So, I mean, clearly we're not doing things right here. So, along with that, typically the types of biases we've seen in our own country, which are not the same if you go to, say, Germany or to France or Italy. In our country, more often than not, white collar is seen as the preferable road to take. BA degrees are seen as the pathway to both higher standards of living as well as full participation, kind of civic participation. And we've got to do some good hard work with our educational institutions and our communities, with parents of children, and with the students themselves to say, there are multiple pathways towards a high standard of living as well as to civic participation. And apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship is part of that. The types of skills training that can happen in this community and technical colleges are part of that as well, and kind of separate out the skills that people need to have to make our economy move forward with the value of civic participation. You can do both. The IBEW members that I taught 30 years ago back in New York City were some of the most highly skilled craftspeople in the world, and they have higher degrees in education at the same time. So we can do it all if we want to invest in it. I've run on too long. I'll stop.
That's good. Thank you so much. I'd like to start out with a question for Dr. Robin Podmore, but I invite the other three panelists to also share your ideas and offer up any input. And it really surrounds military veterans. One of the challenges that's receiving quite a lot of national attention these days is providing jobs and careers for military veterans, in particular our young men just coming home. So Robin, can you talk about any educational and training opportunities that can attract and focus on our military veterans on the energy industry?
Any veterans here, please stand up if you've served this great country of ours. All right, I didn't have to ask. Thank you very much. I'm not a vet. You can probably tell I wasn't born in the USA, but Stella and I were out for the Support Our Troop rallies, waving the great flag, and we became citizens. And as our son went to the U.S. Naval Academy and became a Marine, I get choked up. Hoorah, yeah. I get choked up. He's coming home Friday from a 7-month deployment in Afghanistan, and it's been great. So thank you for your prayers and thoughts. There's been an amazing transition there you would not hear about. Helmand Valley is fed by the Kajaki hydro plant way up north. And of course, being a valley with a hydro plant, it's very irrigable. And guess what the Taliban like to do if they take control of it? They grow poppies and they sell them and they get money to do bad stuff. Our Marines, our forces have totally transformed that. You couldn't go to markets. There were IEDs everywhere. It was totally dangerous. The kids are out, they're playing, the markets are open, and it's awesome. So talk about capacity development. And I saw through going to Iraq starting 2008, where it was really dangerous. Our class could not come into the green zone. Al-Qaeda was spying on them. They were putting their lives at stake. Last time I was there a couple of years ago, they're befriending us on Facebook. They're sending us photographs, and it's an amazing transition. I think Iraq is going to be an amazing place. So we know what the Marines, we know what the military can do. We know the training, but what happens is when they come back here, it's really, really tough, okay? A lot of them got right in out of high school. They made a choice, and then they come back, and it's like they're starting all over. And so one thing that we've been able to do, and thank you for the support from DOE, Deborah, we started the DOE funding, I think, has let a lot of us pursue our dreams and visions and do things that we probably never could have done. And so the issue is, how do we take that opportunity and grow it? So again, I'd like to use some PowerPoints again. My company, Inksys, I started out, my doctorate was in modeling power system network, okay? How to simulate a network. And over time, computers have gotten better and better, and we can do a really good simulation of the grid for the purpose of the people that manage the grid and manage and their job is to keep a balance of power, keep the lights on, and make sure we don't have major blackouts like the one we had down in the Southwest. So these are the guys and women that are often in the command and control positions that are on the other end of the line when the journeymen are actually doing the switching. So it's a very important job. So through a simulator we created, we've been able to train people to practice on a computer without endangering lives, without dropping customer load, and without harming equipment. The military use simulators all the time. The budget for Marine flight simulation is $1 million a year, okay? So when you hire a vet, you are hiring someone that has tremendous training background, all right? All they do is they train, they get ready for when things can, for when bad things can happen. And they have that discipline. You'll hear that a job may be 99% sheer boredom and 1% sheer terror. And the vets are trained to stay on watch, okay? They can sit, I don't know how they do it personally, right? But they can stand there for 8 hours and be alert, and they're constantly doing things to think ahead. So we've had the joy to work with training most of the operators in the country. There are about 6,000 certified operators. They have a certificate to run the electric grid. Puget Power, all your utility companies have these men and women on shift operating the grid. And we don't think about them as long as the lights are on. When there's a blackout, that's when you start calling in. So through this simulator, through partnerships with Gonzaga University, we've brought utilities operators, control room operators and we practice the simulation. Next slide, please. It can be stressful. Here's Eric Hudson from California ISO going through a simulator like all of California is in the dark, okay? He's responsible for training the men and women at California ISO. So Eric's having a hard time right now, okay? It's just kind of, so he's been a great champion. And so literally we can, and we've done that here, we can simulate the restoration of the grid as if there's been a blackout. Next one. And like I said, we had a chance. When I first started going to Iraq, it was really bad. They'd have a blackout, maybe once a week. The whole grid would go out. This is 120 degrees outside. They were bombing transmission lines, and it was the infrastructure was just terrible. I had a chance to work with David Anson, who's actually from Snohomish, and he was responsible for overseeing about $4 million of infrastructure. Talk about having to go through a transformation. We literally had to take a lot of it. They through the U.S. did the training, the capacity building to get that grid stable. It's been running really reliably. We still have to they have rotating brownouts, but at least the grid is very stable. So here, this is a classroom in Sada City near Al-Amin, and these Iraqis are using this simulator to go through the training. The beauty of the power industry, you can go anywhere in the world, and they all have the same problems, okay? And so it's a common language. So I encourage people to join the International Power and Energy Society. Next slide. So we have this hypothetical power system which we can simulate and train operators. So next one. So we came up with the idea of Power for Vets. Let's get veterans trained, certified, and placed in the energy career. Next slide. All right, online training is a challenge, but we have 39 students placed or promoted right now. There's a certificate called the NERC Reliability System Operator Certificate. And if you pass that online exam, you get a certificate to run the grid. It's very ingenious how they actually have lots of example problems to make you think ahead and test out if you're a good operator. Now, you can be book smart and pass that test, and you still would not be able to run the grid. So the employers are always looking for those other skills, all right? But these are vets, many of them, obviously, I'm just learning the joy you get when you empower someone to change their career. I mean, there's nothing like it, is there? You have all, I want to thank you all for devoting your lives to helping men and women in that way. We are just starting to, in the last couple of years, we've gotten a sense of, just what it happens when they get a job and they've had a hard time being out of work and you just change their lives. So the lessons we'd like to transfer from this, though, are that we need to find competency-based tests that are not based upon seat time, okay? I can't think of any jobs that you have. I know you've got to go through that 4-year apprenticeship, but there are things we can do to maximize the value. There's always, I know at BPA, saying there's always more things you can do to learn to become better. So what I'm encouraging the people to do at the college level is to, and we have an environment now where the colleges are really listening to the industry, and obviously we've had to do a lot of that. Next slide, please. Vets are being placed from 65 to 100,000 a year all over the country, and these are really good jobs. They're shift work in many cases, but you get the time off to spend with your family. Next slide. And as part of this program, we've committed to provide academic licenses for the simulator and the online tutorials to 20 colleges throughout the country. And we've got through, thanks to Barbara's help and encouragement, probably most of those, a large amount of those are in Washington State, and I know we've got a lot of people in the audience. So, next slide. So and we are learning together. The process I'm hearing in the meeting we've had is about, what was it? Say it once and train it over and over again. We have an ability by working together to find the right blend between online training and classroom training. Let's face it, you have to have a certain amount of hands-on no matter what it is. But can we blend that so that we can bring those students together for shorter periods of time and complement that with the online? Next slide. So the operator jobs, here's the BPA control room in Monroe. So it's like, the utilities don't like me saying this, but it's like being paid to play the world's largest video game, all right? It literally is. It's an extremely, it can be stressful, it can be multiple inputs, you're interacting with a lot of people. Next slide. So but the transformation you have to go through is that you have young men and women with a different culture. They like to text, and the whole issue of how to get them to show up on time, to pay attention, to be disciplined, to listen, to be patient. I don't know how you do that. When I talked about this with Dave Miranda, he's a Master Chief that retired, the military do it the same way. They take them into a boot camp, all right, and they break them down and they build them up again. They train them things like, if someone messes up, what happens? Exactly. That's how you build teamwork, okay? Yeah, it's tried and true methods that you can't yet use in the colleges, I don't think. Well, we could, why don't we could try it. We could. But one of the connections I've kind of made is that why not take a project like lighting up a village in Africa, okay, and get a group of them together? There's no reason why someone who's been through a couple of years of community college training could not take a team of 10, 12 and go light up a village, all the way from wind turbine to solar panels to even my favorite is the bicycle. 4 hours of pedaling can light up 100 homes with a 1/5 of a watt LED. And that way you can, and so I think we have to encourage the science and math. But the story, is Bob Topping here? I tell this, Bob's not here. All right, well, I'll tell this. Bob's story is he dropped out of high school, and then he joined the Marines, and he became an artilleryman, okay? And he figured he better learn about sines and cosines so that the shell landed in the right place. So if we make the math, and we do this with system operators. Many of our system operators have a high school background. They came out through linemen, power plant operators, and so we can't be throwing lots of equations at them. We use little analogies over and over again, so you can actually show how the grid operates with a series of simple analogies. And then the math becomes relevant. So there's even a class we call Math for System Operators. Just getting the math that you really need to understand. And so at that point, it becomes relevant. They need to understand that there's a certain profile, that if you send too many megawatts over this transmission line, the voltage will collapse and everything will, go down the tubes. So by making, I really believe, and what's happening is, and Wanda is the head evangelist for our business, okay? We've got to get out there. There's a chance right now in this energy business. It's more exciting than it has ever been. I can just tell by the looks on everyone's faces. Because we have renewables distributed, you don't have to be, it's good to be part of a small part of a big organization with central generation, large transmission, but you have the ability to take those skills and go light up a village where you literally do everything. And you can even monitor the power usage and send it on back and give them, people are working on little cards where they can use their cell phones to get electricity. So I've wandered around, but really the key, if we generalize what has been successful in Power for Vets, we took a job, a system operation and control, and then we matched that to an MOS, a military occupational specialty. The ones that suit best are Army prime power and Navy nukes. Do we have any Navy nukes in the audience? Yeah. People probably don't realize the biggest electrical engineering school is where? 1,000 graduates a year. You know where it's located? Not quite. It's the Navy nuke school in Charleston. Okay? They are top quality. And so they understand the fundamentals. And there's 1,000 graduates a year, and we got to kind of get them back. And many of them are in our business already, okay? When you look around, you'll see that they're running places like Commonwealth Edison, but we need to be more proactive. But then we have to use that role model, that find the military occupational specialty that matches the job, all right? And I believe utility linemen, there's a real natural fit with airborne assault jump masters, or airborne assault, okay? They will not have a fear of height. They can handle the equipment. We've got to show them. In fact, you will meet one tonight, running the auction, okay? He's our poster boy. Larry Kite was an Army medic, jump master, and he got into the electrical business a couple of years ago, and now he was employed at BPA as a substation operator. So again, I really encourage us. In the next meeting, I'd like to see a lot more, not just the Veterans Corps, but let's bring more of the actual people from the bases that are helping with the jobs, okay? So we can do it so the thing with the success with our NERC certification is there was a test. If you pass that test, and you interview well as far as your leadership, your situational awareness, your ability to handle stress, you will get the job, all right? And if anything, there's somewhat of a bias against engineers, to be quite true, okay? They think that engineers like myself want to go off and study things forever before we can make a decision. So again, we've got to take the other jobs, the relay techs, the linemen, the substation operators, and find out where the gap is between what a vet may have that's been, say, an electronics technician, and get them the ability to get into that job.
All right, thank you, Robin. Do you want to make a comment?
I'd like to add to that question. The question is, how do you get the veterans into the emerging industries, into the next generation? Through Building Trades, we have a program called Helmets to Hard Hats, and I'll speak briefly on this. Helmets to Hard Hats brings in that we've seen that there was a real need to place some of these guys into and gals into the into the construction trades. So there's some set-asides allowed to bring them direct entry into our apprenticeship programs. Now each affiliate has one, some affiliates have their own programs internal. One is VIP through the plumbers and fitters, and the other is Vice through the electrical union. I'll share a real short story, a good one with you. There's a YouTube video that's just being released. I looked it over, the draft of it, and it's actually about somebody that probably lives within 30 miles from here. He's in an apprenticeship through Local 76. I tried to look at my emails to find his name. I wish I had it. But they went through his day as an electrician. And he is back he's on the joint base right now working, which is a good fit for him. But through his apprenticeship, he is getting the cutting edge curriculum training on that next generation. So through the building trades, we are grabbing those veterans, we're identifying them, we're placing them in the crafts that they want to be in, that's the best fit for them, and we're training them. They may not be working on those facilities now because some of those industries aren't there yet. But he's going to be trained when they do get here. And we're going to continue to do that because there is a real need to find places for these folks coming back. And we've cut some red tape to do that.
Thank you very much. I liked your story, and I think Kelly has a couple of stories. Kelly, you've shared with me that you have some stories about career transitions that your students have made. And so I guess, where do you get your students, and could you talk to us about that?
I'm not allowed to get my students by breaking them down and building them back up and forcing them to stay in the class. But the class that I have the most experience with is called the Sustainable Building Advisor course, SBA, which is a common acronym for other things. But when I say SBA, that's what I'm talking about. It's a 9-month-long professional certificate program. It was originally designed for working professionals who already have some experience in the building industry. And I've been able to facilitate that class at Seattle Central Community College for a number of years. And it's been really exciting to see students do some very interesting things with that program. So the philosophy, when it started over 12 years ago, and there were employers who paid for their employees to go through training. This is much more rare now. So originally the idea was to get architects to be better, greener architects. But some of my favorite students didn't have a building background when they came in or had a different background. One student named Kylie came in. She had been an administrative assistant for a long time, but was really excited about sustainability, and she's now working as a utility analyst. Ryan was a bouncer at a nightclub, big guy, but really passionate about health. Now he works for the American Lung Association and audits single-family homes and helps people identify where the sources of asthma and things are in their homes. And Ed had been in the building industry, been a builder for a really long time, and knew a lot about construction and being in the field, on the ground, brought an incredible amount of knowledge to share with the people who had a 4-year degree and didn't have the field experience. But he decided he was tired of working and being sore all the time, got a job for Humanity and is their sustainability director. Students have done with the class. Over the 9 months, they get, let's say 1 or 2 days on sustainable sites, on water reuse, on energy, one whole class on HVAC systems and natural ventilation. Nobody's an expert after 1 day on that topic, right? But this is getting back to that point about knowing what you don't know. It's a little bit terrifying. In the spring, every year, the students get really cranky. I notice sort of a path and how their emotions go. And it's because it's dawning on them how much they do not know. And they thought they were going to be an expert when they were done with this class. So it's great. I took the class myself. That is how I transitioned into working at O'Brien & Company. I had a background in coordinating volunteers for a nonprofit, and I was out in the field building trails and planting trees every Saturday and getting dirty, and it was a great job, but I needed to do something a little bit different. So I took this class and was able to transfer my communication marketing skills into marketing for the company, and then I've learned about green building on the job in addition to the 9-month class. And the credential has really helped students as well. So people are always asking me, what kind of green building credential do people need, and which credential systems are the best? And I'd say there's there's a lot that needs to shake out still. People are still inventing credentials at an incredible rate. But I personally think the CSBA, Certified Sustainable Building Advisor credential, is one that speaks to what I talked about earlier about the integrated design. You get to do a team project, so it's really hands-on. You're thinking about applying what you're learning with other diverse professionals throughout the whole class. So it's fun to see where students go.
Thank you, Kelly. I think we have just a few more minutes for questions. So for any of our panelists, there's one at the back.
I'm Fred Berg with Puget Sound Electrical Apprenticeship. To kind of piggyback on what my friend up here said, one of the panelists concerning these different programs for vets. He referred to the VICE program, that's Veterans in Construction Electrical. That began in Seattle. It's being piloted in different areas around the country. It's for a different entry from the normal process to enter the electrical apprenticeship. We serve King County in the northern half of the peninsula. It started 3 years ago, and we currently have probably 100 or 110 veterans who are now apprentices, either just getting started or I've had them in class here, just finished up a quarter for 4th year of apprenticeship. If you'd like further information and the detail about how that process works, either because you personally know a vet who don't have to have electrical background, that's helpful, but don't have to have that, some level of competence in math skills, or as a part of your program or wherever you are in this mix of energy-related industries and schools. I have further information upstairs. Our booth is all the way in the back corner. Stop by. I've got flyers and further information if you'd like.
Okay, one question. Bob, did you have a question? Oh, right. Oh, okay. Okay, is there anybody that has one question? Oh, you have a statement? Okay, let Allison ask.
Okay, this is a question for David. You were talking about this, the National Building Trades and the curriculum that they deploy, and you talked about it in very general terms, so I'm curious if you can give us some examples of what types of curriculum are currently either in development or being deployed right now.
That might help.
So in short, I don't have those details. I know when we go back for our legislative conferences, for any of our conferences, I mean, the solar, the wind, I mean, they're just pounding it. We're gonna pump out this curriculum. I kind of glaze over a little bit because, I'm legislatively based and not, teaching classes. But I'd love to share that with you away from here.
There's one that I'm aware of. It's called Sustainability in the Building and Construction Trades, and it was developed here in Washington State. O'Brien and Company helped the Workforce Development Council of Seattle, King County put it together, and it's a total of 4 hours of content on Green Building 101, the integrated process, it's an introduction to, exciting new strategies, the sexy part of green buildings, and then job site best practices.
Okay, we'll close with one comment from Bob.
Well, thank you. I'm Bob Gunther. I'm a lobbyist for IBEW 77, but I think I'd be remiss to let this audience break up without making a statement about collaboration and being cooperative. I just want to tell you this quick story about how labor and the Association General Contractors came together in these tough economic times prior to the last legislative session. And I was very privileged to be with the Building and Construction Trades and the Washington State Labor Council at their table with the AGC. Now that is some pretty strange partners at the AGC and the Washington State Labor Council and the Building and Construction Trades. I'm here to tell you, in 30 minutes, those two entities sat down and agreed on $1 billion package that passed the legislature that put 22,000 people to work this year.
Wow. So I just want to conclude by saying that everybody on this panel, each individual has a website. So they've talked about several programs, and if you visit their website, you'll surely find more information on your topics of interest. It's been a pleasure to moderate this panel, and thank you very much.